It was the best sled dog in the world, yet its owner gave it away to a stranger without a second thought. But the stranger had no idea how special it was. The very next day, he brought the husky puppy back, saying it was way too wild and impossible to handle. Leonhard, the owner, looked at the puppy with another wave of frustration. Annoyed, he locked it up and piled stones around the kennel to block it in. "Let's see how you escape this time." While Leonhard trained his sled dogs, the puppy grew restless. It was desperate to follow, but was blocked by a wire fence. Then it began furiously digging. The dogs nearby followed its lead. When the first hole didn't work, it started a second. The others gave up one by one, but it kept going. Finally, by the seventh hole, it broke free. Every time it escaped, it somehow managed to find Leonhard again. It had the natural presence of a leader, and that energy always stirred up the whole sled team into chaos. Then, out of nowhere, a herd of deer caught its eye. Without a second thought, it took off chasing them, and the entire sled team followed behind. No matter how loudly Leonhard shouted, none of them listened. The puppy charged forward, head down, but it was too small, and tall grass blocked its view. The next second, it plunged straight into the river. Leonhard saw it and urgently ordered a left turn. The dogs quickly adjusted course, whipping the sled in a sharp curve. But it was too late. Leonhard and the sled flipped straight into the water. Leonhard, furious, locked the puppy in a dark shed. At first, the little one panicked, running wildly around the room. But once it calmed down, it began studying its surroundings carefully. It noticed a gap in the ventilation duct, just wide enough to squeeze through. It immediately plotted an escape route. First, it climbed into the cabinet, then up through the shelves one step at a time. It crept along the ceiling beams, made its way to the roof, and finally pushed open the vent with its head. That tiny head popping out was so adorable that it made Leonhard's wife, Constance, burst into laughter. In one agile leap, the puppy landed and took off running, on its way to find Leonhard again. After countless escapes and disobedience, Leonhard made a harsh decision. Ignoring his wife's objections, he sent the puppy far away. The new owner immediately locked the dog up, and although the house looked nicer, the puppy only wanted one thing: to go back. It ran circles in the room, frantically trying to find a way out. Then it stopped. It looked toward the window and backed up a few steps. It ran for dozens of kilometers. No one knows how it managed to find its way. While training deep in the woods, Leonhard suddenly heard a familiar bark. He looked up, and there it was. Leonhard couldn't believe it. This puppy could always find him. Seeing its paw cut by glass, Leonhard finally softened. He decided to take the pup back home. He tried to let it ride on the sled to rest, but it jumped off and ran straight to the front of the team. "You're not ready to lead just yet." Leonhard picked it up and tossed it to the very back. The dog next to it gave a look of pure annoyance, and that's how the puppy officially became part of the sled team. Leonhard soon noticed something incredible. Its speed and endurance far outmatched the other dogs. So he moved it up one row, but it was still faster than the dogs beside it. By the time they got home, the puppy had reached the very front. Constance smiled with joy. The puppy had finally proven its worth. Even though no one believed in it before, it earned its place with strength and determination. Leonhard gave the puppy a name, Togo. From that moment on, Togo became Leonhard's most trusted partner. 1 year later, they entered the Alaska Sled Dog Championship and won. Togo instantly became the most outstanding sled dog of all. But Leonhard didn't know that one decision would almost cost Togo its life. An outbreak of diphtheria suddenly struck the town. Dozens of children were infected. The disease had an extremely high fatality rate. In a matter of days, 5 children had already died. The serum needed to treat them was in a city 400 miles away, but winter was coming fast, and a massive storm was on the horizon. Planes couldn't fly through it. Leonhard was chosen for the mission. A race against death. At the time, Togo was already 12 years old. Constance begged him not to bring Togo. Togo was too old, but Leonhard knew. Without Togo, he didn't stand a chance. Time was running out. The next morning, Leonhard said goodbye to his wife. This journey might be his last. Finally, Constance walked over to Togo, looked into his eyes and said,
"Bring him back to me, okay? And you come back to me. Good boy."
And just like that, Leonhard and Togo set off. with the hope of the entire town resting on their shoulders. The townspeople gathered to see them off. Their eyes were filled with worry, admiration, and hope. This was a hero's journey. Leaving the town behind, Togo led the team across the snowy wilderness. The mountains ahead were completely engulfed by a raging blizzard. Winds howled, and snow filled the air. Togo showed no fear. Charging ahead, he led the team straight into the storm. They struggled over a steep mountain. After finally reaching the summit, they faced a long, steep descent. The blizzard grew even fiercer. The swirling snow blinded Leonhard. He could no longer see what was ahead. They rushed downhill, gaining speed. Togo sensed something was wrong. A deadly drop loomed ahead. He stopped abruptly and barked loudly. Leonhard caught the warning and tried to use his ice axe to stop the sled, but they were going too fast. Leonhard jumped off, trying to jam the ice axe into the ground, but the force dragged him down. They were sliding faster and faster, about to plunge off the cliff. At the last second, Leonhard managed to drive the ice axe deep into the ground and stop them. Just one step forward would have meant death. Leonhard shouted, "Togo! Turn around and climb back up." The other dogs were frozen in fear. Togo carefully stepped back. The ground beneath him was slippery, but he didn't panic. He shifted his weight, turned, and began to climb. He tried again and again. His paws were torn and bleeding, but he never gave up. Finally, after countless efforts, Togo pulled the entire team back to safety. He came to Leonhard's side, gently licking the ice off his face as if to comfort him. Leonhard looked at Togo's bloodied paws, heart aching. After escaping danger, Leonhard decided to cross the frozen surface of the Bering Sea. This would cut the journey time in half. Locals called this place the Sound, because the sound of cracking ice could be heard everywhere. The movement of the sled instantly fractured the fragile ice, sending bursts of seawater into the air. The dogs were terrified, but there was no turning back now. Leonhard called out the names of each dog, cheering them on. The temperature had dropped to -60 degrees, with wind speeds over 100 kilometers per hour. Their only option was to move forward. The mayor sent word of Leonhard's heroic journey to the newspapers. Their story spread across the country, capturing the nation's attention. Everyone was in awe. They weren't just worried about whether the serum could be delivered, they feared Leonhard and his team might never make it back alive. To ease the burden, the mayor sent 20 sled teams to help transport the serum. But no one expected that Leonhard would actually dare cross the deadly Bering Sea. His pace had far exceeded everyone's predictions. If he missed the relay point, it would cost precious time and put the entire team in danger. By then, Leonhard had been running non-stop through wind and snow for over 24 hours. He was barely holding on, his mind clouded with exhaustion. Only Togo's unwavering strength kept them going. Just as the relay team was resting, Leonhard passed right by them. They spotted him and scrambled after the sled, shouting at the top of their lungs, but the blizzard drowned out every sound. Thankfully, Togo heard them. Soon after, Leonhard turned back. They reached the nearest station and completed the serum handoff. They could finally rest for one night. The next morning, Leonhard set off again. There was no time to waste. He decided to cross the Bering Sea once more, but the cracks in the ice were even more visible than before. This crossing would be even more dangerous. Leonhard thought for a moment, then gave the command. They began the most treacherous part of their journey. Once again, they charged forward with everything they had. The sea beneath their feet roared with fury. One slip could mean the end for the whole team. It wasn't long before the ice shattered under the waves. Huge swells lifted and tossed floating sheets of ice. The surface was slick and sloped. The dogs could barely stay upright. Togo had no time to be afraid. He just kept pushing forward. Leonhard looked back. The ice they had just crossed had completely collapsed. Waves crashed over it. They were almost at the shoreline, but the floating ice was still 10 meters away from land. 1 man and 10 dogs. How could they get across? Leonhard turned and drove an iron spike into the sled for support. He tied a rope to Togo. Then, with all his strength, he threw Togo toward the shore. Now, it was up to Togo to pull the entire floating ice sheet. Togo gave it everything he had, adjusting his rhythm. If once wasn't enough, he tried twice. If twice failed, he went for a 3rd time. All the dogs barked wildly, cheering him on. The ice slowly began drifting toward the shore. This was the moment. Leonhard untied the rope, shouted the command, and every dog lunged forward at once. Togo was nothing short of a hero. At the next stop, a native woman gently stroked Togo's head, her tears falling silently. She said, "Togo is dying." The next day they set out again. Leonhard wanted Togo to rest and placed him on the sled, but no matter how many times he tried, Togo firmly stood at the front of the team. He was determined to fulfill his duty. Leonhard had no choice but to give in and tie the harness back into place. With only 20 miles left in the journey, Leonhard was completely exhausted. Snowflakes whipped at his face like knives, blinding him. He said to Togo, "From here on, it's all up to you." Eventually, the cold and fatigue overwhelmed Leonhard. He collapsed onto the sled and fell into a deep sleep. His life, the lives of the dogs, and the lives of over 50 children, all now rested in Togo's paws. Togo stayed true to his mission, leading the team through the raging blizzard. No one knows how long had passed. When Leonhard finally woke up, night had already fallen, and a terrible feeling crept into his heart. He crawled to Togo and called out anxiously, his voice filled with worry. But Togo was so tired, he couldn't even open his eyes. Was this the end? Just then, a beam of light appeared behind Leonhard. It was the supply team. Togo had already completed the task Leonhard had entrusted to him. They were saved. The children were saved. The serum continued its journey through the hands of other sled teams and was eventually delivered safely to the town. Over the following days, many people came to Leonhard's home. They brought gifts to show their gratitude. Even the mayor personally came to offer thanks. But Leonhard couldn't feel any joy. Togo was on the brink of death. Leonhard was filled with guilt. He only hoped Togo could recover quickly. He let Togo sleep in his own bed. Thanks to Constance's careful care over the next few days, Togo slowly regained his strength. Leonhard got ready to head out. He didn't want Togo to work anymore and left him at home. But just like when he was a pup, Togo always found a way. Nothing could stop him from running after Leonhard, even with an injured leg. Even while limping, Leonhard heard a familiar sound behind him. He turned around, and for a moment, it felt like he was seeing the young Togo again, charging toward him with everything he had. In that moment, Leonhard finally understood. Togo lived for him. The film Togo is based on a true story. In 1925, an outbreak of diphtheria struck Alaska. A total of 20 sled dog teams took part in the serum relay. 19 of those teams each ran an average of 50 kilometers. But one team ran 425 kilometers. That was Togo's team. Togo's story remained in the shadows for 86 years, until in 2011, Time magazine named him the most heroic animal of all time. He was born weak and sickly, but broke through the chains of fate with sheer willpower, achieving greatness. Once rejected by his owner, he still ran back to him again and again, faithful to the end.
And if you're lucky enough to have known a great one, they never really leave. They stay with you as long as you live, harnessed to your heart, giving their all.